Hello and welcome to the Metapod Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. My name is Jake and that is Sean. Sean, how's it going? Welcome. It's new. This week is New Year's that we're recording. So how
Yeah.
has your year been?
Boy, it's been a year. Let's just say that. It's been a whole year. A lot of things happened in my life, but overall it's been good. I mean, I can't complain. I lived in Vancouver. I went to Yellowstone. I didn't go to Japan this year, but hopefully when we do this one next year, I'll have gone to Japan again. You never know.
Dang,
So, but
you're lucky.
it was a cool year before. I have some things that I'm kind of looking forward to. So can't complain, honestly. How about you?
Sean ready to win the World Championships in 2025. Part of his list. My year was pretty good. Full year in Vegas. Did not move to another city this year, which is good.
Yeah, you've been on
Doing
that new
pretty all
city
right.
roll for a minute now.
Yeah, and like new places as well. I feel like I am the co-host that is always like in a different place, and Sean is the co-host that's always in the same place,
Yeah,
pretty much.
yeah.
The amount of times that I've been in a different location like today, uh, much more than you. But we've got a lot to talk about in this podcast today. Not only has there been some cool news that's released in the last couple weeks, especially ones that we really, really want to hit on, right? Even if we're maybe a little bit late to the party because we're recording this early. It's new to us at this time, and probably you'll learn some things as well new to you. But we also kind of want to recap the year and talk about, the year of the Pokemon trading card game as well. Typical end of the year type shenanigans. Some of you guys gave us feedback in the Discord as well, which is super awesome. Thank you all for the 0 days since I've promoted the official Metapod Discord server that you can find in the link in the description below.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the news, Jake, there were really
Mm-hmm.
just two things, but one of them was pretty cool. We did get the list of 4 decks that the Pokemon Company is going to be printing in the near future. I don't know when these. Did they say when these arrive?
It's like March 2025,
Right.
March 7th
So
specifically.
these are the World Championship decks. So every year for a very long time, actually, I don't know when they started this, but a very long time, Pokemon prints a set of usually 4 World Championship decks that are exactly the 60 cards that 4 of the players between Masters, Juniors, and Seniors. They'll pick 4 different decks. They're the exact 60. The only difference with World Championship decks from all the other decks or any other card you might find is these are not tournament legal cards, and their card backs are unique to the World Championship year that they're a part of. So, you're not going to be able to like buy these and then go play the decks at like an official event, but you will be able to buy these to like have like a little time capsule of like what a format looked like for any given World Championship, and a lot of people collect these. So, Jake, what are the 4 choices for this year? What will represent 2024 Worlds?
Some of my favorite products that the Pokemon Company produces, really nice for retro collecting. I have several retro decks, and formats that I play in tournaments and things like that. It has the World Championship, right? Iron Thorns, the big surprise for everyone, and kind of cool to see also Miraidon EX, Jesse Parker's Miraidon EX. Well, the champion being Fernando Cifuentes. Wanted
Yeah.
to mention that. Didn't want to leave him out, being the world champion and stuff. But Jesse Parker's Miraidon deck. So both of the Masters decks, right? The 2 of the 4 Masters decks being electric based decks, even though they're both incredibly different,
Yeah.
which is really, really interesting. Ewan Pavelski,
I believe so.
I
Yeah.
believe is how you pronounce it. I think the seniors champion, senior champion from the U.S. He has a Reggie Drago deck, right? So very, very cool in my opinion, especially for like the World Championships. Reggie Drago was super influential in that World Championships, right? And has been in the format since the World Championships. So I think it's really nice that they've got at least one of these decks as Reggie Drago. I think it's very indicative of, the format in itself. And then the junior champion from Japan, Sakuya Ota, having Ancient Box. Ancient Toolbox is what he's called it, with the Roaring Moon as well. So this isn't like Roaring Moon EX kind of thing. This is just the base mini baby Roaring Moon guy that does the more damage for the amount of ancient cards in your discard pile.
Yeah, I mean, I think really cool decks. I think
Mm-hmm.
obviously you have the three winners and then Jesse Parker's deck, who just a really amazing run during the World Championships. And I love how Jesse has also named his deck the Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
So, they usually get to pick a name for their decks. And so Fernando chose Crushing Thorn instead of Iron Thorn. So, yeah, just a little cheeky there for both of them. But yeah.
Interesting with the Dawn. Definitely had to add that apostrophe in the Dawn to not get any like copyright claims from Bandai, like for any
Yeah.
One Piece TCG fans. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, that is very funny. It's a good catch.
Hmm.
But yeah, these are the World Championship decks. Just a little bit of news there. If you collect these, or if you're looking to get into collecting some of the World Championship decks over the years, March, you're going to be able to get your hands on this last World. So, congrats to all the players. Obviously, double congrats for having won the World Championships or doing very well. But
Yeah,
now
I
you're sort
mean
of
history.
immortalized. Yeah.
Yeah, the each of these decks when they release, they'll cost $20 MSRP, and then they come with the full 60 card deck as we talked about. They get a little deck box, which in the past the deck box does not fit a sleeved deck.
Yeah.
I think it fits an unsleeved deck. So however you want to store it, is the little paper deck box there. There's a booklet talking about the World Championships, a pin, which is a pin and coin, which coincide with the World Championship that it came from. So if you look like on PokeBeach's website, it's the like Scuba Pikachu
Yeah.
from the championship. So I know a lot of people, just love the pins and the coins and stuff like that that come in these, and then playmat poster with a code card. So
The other piece of news, though, Jake, this one's pretty cool, coming out of China. So, for those of you who, like myself and Jake and most people, do not closely follow the Chinese Pokemon TCG scene.
but collect
Yeah.
international cards.
Um, just some backstory here. China just recently got the TCG. For many, many years, it was banned in China or not released. I think it was banned, actually. But um, obviously, times have changed. The Pokemon TCG is now in China. As a part of that, though, they have been re-releasing the last several years of sets, and they're doing it in a unique way. They're trying to catch China up to the rest of the world. Um, and in doing so, they're creating kind of new mega sets. So they'll like smush sets together sometimes into like crazy large sets, but every now and again, because they have the opportunity to this. China's a huge market. They will print new artwork of cards that obviously we've had for a minute. So this card I'm about to show you, I will also note it has the regulation mark. I think C, which is very strange. At the
Oh
bottom
yeah,
of
I
it.
didn't notice that. No, I think it's G.
Is it? Oh, it is G. You're right. You're right. But
Yeah, yeah. 151C is
is the
151
name?
China. Yeah.
Oh, right, right.
It's specifically 151 China. But yeah, regulation G. Regulation G.
But the card that I have on screen right now, Jake, there's like four cards that are different arts of the same card, and it is the 151 Pikachu, I would imagine.
Mhm.
Maybe it's technically a Pikachu from a different set, but it's in 151 for them. Doesn't matter. It's a Pikachu, and the art is just gorgeous. I have it pulled up on screen for the viewers, but for the listeners, I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's a really cool, like, sort of rough hand drawn sort of style, like a little rough around the edges. Um, but it's Gengar, it's Pikachu in the woods, and Gengar and Ekans, and Gengar is sort of menacing Pikachu.
Hmm.
You have Pikachu in a forest with a bunch of other Pikachu and a Cubone and a Vulpix in the background, and then you have Pikachu sort of jumping through the air with Mew in the background, and then the last one
Don't forget the
is
Pidgey.
and the
Don't
Pidgey and the
forget the
Pidgey. We
best
can't forget the
151.
Pidgey. And then finally, you have Pikachu looking over a sleeping Psyduck with a Jigglypuff on a rock and a Dragonite flying in the background. If you are not watching this and instead listening, I encourage you to just like go look up these cards because the artwork is amazing.
Hmm.
I doubt very much they'll ever print this in anywhere outside of China.
No, yeah,
Um,
it is going to exclusively stay in China, I'm sure.
so you won't be able to like get yourself a copy of these cards for any tournament legal decks. That said, I think it's important here as a reminder of hey, if you want to collect them, I think this is such a cool product to collect because the cards shouldn't be that expensive. It might be hard to like find copies of them because the Chinese market is just so disconnected as far as I understand it from the rest of the Pokemon TCG market. But
Hmm.
um, they won't be hard to find. They're not going to be like the Van Gogh Pikachu. You're not gonna have crazy problems, I don't think, finding these
especially
copies.
with especially with so many different alternate arts, right? There are four alternate arts for this one Pikachu, so you'll have
Yeah,
some that are more higher. Like the Gengar one's probably going to be the highest, I would imagine,
yeah.
because it's got Gengar on it. But some of them will be higher than others and easier to find.
But the other thing is, if outside of collecting, just a reminder, GLC, the official rules for GLC are that you can play a copy of any card in any language, so
Hmm.
long as it's legal normally in GLC. And so, if you are playing an electric deck that maybe wants a Pikachu or maybe wants something to go into Raichu, whatever that might be, this would be a really cool card to include one of these copies of, because I'm sure your opponents are not. They're going to be like, "What card is that?" Because didn't come out anywhere, and it make for a fun little story while you're playing GLC. So,
The whole 151 journey set, which is what their collect 151 journey. That's what the set in Japan is actually called. It's super interesting. It's releasing on January 17th. So if you're trying to look for it online or anything like that, and trying to find out a date when a lot of these cards are going to start popping up, that's going to be your date. A lot of these cards, they have like a different Pokeball and Master Ball Reverse Hollow promo. So, that was the craze in 151 is now the craze in Terrestrial Festival or
mhm.
whatever it is. And so this being a little bit different is just another cool way to collect some different things. There's also, I don't know if you like read this in here, Sean, but China is also alongside this set releasing binders for every single Generation 1 Pokemon. These are 9-page binders, but these binders, each of them are going to be sealed. So it's going to be random as to what Pokemon you're getting. You're going to buy like a 151 Journey binder. It's a Gamba binder. Like
Okay.
it's like a Pokemon pack for binders. So I think some of these binders are really cool. Again, on PokeBeach's website, like we were saying, like there are images and stuff that they've got on there, and so they've got images of what the cover of each binder is going to look like. So if you're on January 17th, if you're looking for a cool, unique binder, personally, I want the Porygon binder. I'm gonna start looking on eBay and like different sites, to try to find the Porygon specific binder in there. So you can get your favorite 151 Pokemon, and depending on what it is, you might break the bank. But if you're a big fan of like Oddish or, Tangela, uh, you might be able to find those pretty easily.
I'm like looking at it now. I'm like, okay, I see now like what the binders look like. They're like these.
Mm-hmm.
It. Yeah, are they must be very small, the binders, right? You said like
Well,
9
they're
car
9 page, or each binder can hold 9 card pages, end quote.
Oh, it's like is it like a
So
3-ring
these,
binder style?
yeah, well, I don't know if it's 3 ring. I don't know if we know that exactly yet, at least from this Poke Beach article. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like it's basically like 3 rows of three.
3. Yeah.
3 rows of three. So 3 columns of three and 3 rows of three. That's the easiest way to kind of explain the size. It's pretty standard, I feel like, to a lot of binders, or like specifically, like you mentioned, 3 ring binders. You
Yeah.
know that were, I think, much more popular in the early 2000s.
I will say the vibe for these binders, it's like it feels like graphic design student um style, cuz I mean
Hey,
for
it's way better than Ultra Pro.
oh no,
Like
that's not a
it's
bad thing. Like it
yeah.
feels like something that like somebody who is doing like an art project of like what would a cool Pokemon binder look like if we made it look like a poster that featured
Mhm.
like each Pokemon in this cool flat graphic design style and like I vibe with it. I'm
Yeah,
not
I think
showing it
they're
on the
cool.
screen, but like definitely look this up on Poke Beach. Yeah, and also that's just so many binders to produce. That's crazy.
And I mean, like, we see this theme a lot, not necessarily in the US. We don't really see these well, I don't want to call them Gambo, but like these pack that are not packs of cards, right? In Japan, we talked about the 100 starter decks or whatever. Do you remember
Yeah.
that? Like
Yeah, yeah.
where you just like got a random starter deck. So it's interesting that this is releasing in China. I wouldn't have expected this to come in China, but just a really cool thing that, again, like on January 17th, when this set releases and all these products release, that might be a cool way to spend your Christmas money that you got this year, you know?
Yeah, so moving on to our like big main topic, I guess. I don't know. It's going to be a bit rambly, going to be a bit ranty maybe. But stick with us a little bit, but yeah, we're just going to do a look back at 2024 now that we've reached the end of the year. What do we feel about this year? What stands out to us as good and what stands out to us even as things that may the Pokemon Company should maybe consider changing in future years. Because I do think there are some, as the Pokemon TCG has evolved in different ways, I do think there are some weird holdovers from prior eras that don't necessarily translate the same way anymore. That's a very vague statement, but we'll get into it. We also have a few examples here from some folks in the Discord that they sent us. So when we get around to that, we will definitely shout them out. But Jake, as a refresher for everybody, there were 6 sets that came out in 2024. Starting from the oldest and going up to the most recent, we got Paldean Fates kicked off the year in January. For those of you who don't remember, that was a big reprint set, and it was our shiny Pokemon set. So every couple of
Hmm.
years, Pokemon has like a shiny Pokemon set, and Paldean Fates was our, you know, poorly named Hidden Fates remix
Yeah.
mashup, set.
To
Um,
be fair, before we go a little, I know I'm historically ragged on these names on the podcast, but I will say when you hear the name, you don't need to know what set it is to know exactly what it does, right?
that's
Because
true.
it's had that theme, it's had that ring, oh, that's a shiny Pokemon set, isn't it? So it's just a small tangent. I know I rag on them a lot, but the theme works well.
Yeah,
It sucks.
yeah. We'll see what it's like in the future, but
Yeah.
and then you got temporal forces, so sort of a continuation of future and ancient Pokemon doubling down. Um, After that, we got Twilight Masquerade with all the Ogre shenanigans. In August, we had Shrouded Fable, so another specialty set, which seems to be a new theme of ours. The last couple of years, we get sort of 2 specialty sets a year now instead of 1. So we get one at the beginning of the year and one sort of in the summer. Um, and then finally, rounding out the year, we had Stellar Crown in September, and the set that everyone knows, loves, and can't find on shelves, Surging Sparks, closing out the year. So, Jake, is there any place you want to start? Should we start from the beginning, or where do you want to start this journey?
I think we should probably just start with the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Just make it easy.
So yeah, I mean, Paldean Fates. I'm not going to necessarily pull all the cards up on screen. I think we can just talk about it. But if I were to say, like, this whole set, it's a reprint set. Um, I think in the past, reprint sets have been very good, very popular, especially like, you think about how popular Hidden Fates was when it released. I think in my era, in the time that I've played, I think Hidden Fates is the one that stands out as like that is the pinnacle. Like
Yeah.
when it came out, people were hyped, people were going to GameStops, going to store shelves, clearing them out, trying to collect them all. Uh, but I think that time has passed in terms of shiny Pokemon because I forgot Paldean Fates even existed until I looked at this, to be honest. Like if you'd mentioned it, it would, trigger something in my brain, but like top of mind, I could not have told you Paldean Fates existed. And
Hmm.
when I looked through all of these shiny Pokemon, Jake, I don't think I have seen anyone bling out their deck with any of these shiny cards at all. I think I'm sure there are collectors of them. They are very cute, but I just don't think that shiny Pokemon, the way that they, have made them in the past, um, retains the collectability that it used to have.
Well, I think the big problem behind that though is that what the format exactly looks like, right? So if you think about the different baby Pokemon that are in this format and what are used, the ones that you can think of, like just kind of browsing through these super quickly to pick off a couple,
Hmm.
maybe Klefki, right? That's kind of a fringe card in like Gardevoir decks. You have Cleffa, right? That's in Regidrago. Excalibur, maybe if you're running like
Charmander?
specifically just a Chin Pow deck. Yeah, you have Charmander, but is this even the correct Charmander? I think maybe is the correct Charmander and Charmeleon in there. I think those are both correct. So it's just like the Pidgey, that's the call for family Pidgey, that I
Hmm.
think is at least split in the deck. But I think what was the strong point, at least for Paldean Fates, one, the trainers, right?
Hmm.
You have reprints of Judge in there, which is a really, really cool card. We talked about that last week on the podcast. And then you had reprints of Arvin and Iono, which are really, really nice. Penny has some sort of niche play as well. So getting another alternate art of that is really cool. But I think another one of the strong points is the EXs in this set.
Hmm.
Not necessarily in terms of a immediate impact, right? Because I think I quote myself at the beginning when we saw this set where it was like Fortress, Toadscruel, Espathra, Alakazam, Glimora, Clodsire, Wigglytuff. Like what are the EXs in the set? But having shiny versions of Gardevoir, also an alternate
Yeah.
art special illustration of Gardevoir. You have Pidgeot EX, you have Mew EX, you have Squawkabilly EX, you have Pidgeot EX. There's some pretty good cards. So I think like over time, this set got more and more value because of decks like Gardevoir just being good throughout the whole format, right? I think, you can hear through a lot of different podcasts and shows a lot of people a couple times throughout the year that were like, "Oh no, Gardevoir, don't play Gardevoir, don't play Gardevoir, don't play Gardevoir," and then Henry Chow gets top 8 or
Yeah.
whatever with Gardevoir for the 10th time in a row. Um, so not only having that, but also the shiny alternate special illustration of Charizard. Like the special illustrations were also really good in this set. Not too many or what are like the character rare versions again called?
I mean, illustration rares and
Yeah,
special illustrations.
illustration.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the regular illustrations, there's not too many of those in there. The baby shinies kind of took its place, I think, but Um, but yeah, in summary, I think this set got better as time went on.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I don't know. Like, obviously, I think the money card from this set is shiny Bubble Mew. That's
Yeah.
the money card. Like, from a value perspective, I don't even think like that Charizard. It's a cool Charizard, but the Charizard, I'm pretty sure the Charizard that's the special illustration rare from Obsidian Flame is maybe the more desirable Charizard EX rather than the Paldean Fate special illustration rare. But um, yeah, I mean there are some good arts. I think that this set, and I will say there was also a whole set of gold cards that also had like a weird blue green background.
Hmm.
Um, I appreciate Pokemon trying new things, especially with these golds. It's a very strange look, but go for it, try something new. But I don't know. If I were to take one thing away from Paldean Fates, it's that I think the era of shiny Pokemon cards looking a certain way, the way that they do here, I think that era of excitability of the market is probably past. You know,
Dude, we've done it.
you're right. We've done it, and then you have cards like special illustration rares that are just blow your socks off, gorgeous, right?
Hmm.
Um, And so, like, gone are the days where, like, the most rare version of a card is a rainbow rare that kind of just looks like every other rainbow rare if you sit them all in a lineup, right? No, like,
Yeah.
there's like unique art. And so I do wonder if the next shiny set we get, if, the illustrators and the Pokemon company out in Japan, because they're the ones that ultimately do this, if somebody on their team if the sales were a little lower, maybe if somebody on their team decides, hey, let's integrate shiny Pokemon into special illustration rare, designs, because that's part of the reason that Bubble Mew is so desired. Yes, it's Mew, which is just a highly collectible card, but it's a shiny version of Mew in like a form that is a special illustration rare, you know, wrapper.
Yeah, the
Um,
Gardevoir are the same thing, you know?
Right. It's a shiny version of Gardevoir. It's a shiny version of Charizard. So I really hope that becomes the new shiny moving forward. Is that like all shinies are just integrated into wider scenes? Um, and you might argue maybe that takes away from illustration rares a little bit, but like because if you try to mash them together in the same set, but I think putting them in the same set, it just means that the regular shinies are not going to be really chased. So
Hmm.
So that would be the first one where I was like, don't get me wrong, there's some bangers in the set, but I think this upcoming Prismatic Evolutions will be a much more successful year opener set than Paldean
Yeah,
Fates was.
I agree with that.
But yeah, that was Paldean Fates. Not a ton of new cards playable wise either that came out in the set. I think you had like Moonlit Hill was probably the most playable, like, quote unquote new card from the set.
Yes, I think so.
So you don't expect too much from specialty sets anyways, but still, Um, but moving on, the next set in the year, Temporal Forces, and I'll just start off, Jake. Temporal Forces, I almost forgot that, this marks the moment that Ace Specs returned. So we've had a year of Ace Specs, Jake. I think, we can talk about sets and whatever, but a year of Ace Specs, how are you feeling?
Apex, I think most of what I'm feeling is very similar to you in that you mentioned this before the podcast that it's only been a year since Apex have been around. They've been so impactful, I feel like, within decks that it feels like they've been around longer than they have. I think Apex have been really cool. I think they've, I really like the idea kind of as like the one of that is somewhat searchable, right? In
With
most
Arvin.
cases,
Arvin
especially
is
yeah, with
maybe the,
Arvin.
Arvin is the enabler of the Ace Spec, in my opinion.
Yeah, pretty much outside of like special energy aspects.
Yeah.
And I think there's a variety of different effects. Temporal Forces stands out to me because this is a set that introduced Prime Catcher, which they introduced arguably the greatest ace spec to exist, in the first set, and it felt like, I think for a little bit, that there wasn't too many other ace specs outside of that. So, um, but yeah, ace specs have been interesting to me. Some of them seem like some niche play, like the Neo Upper and the Hero's Cape. I think Master Ball Lugia was a thing
Hmm.
at one point as well. So, poor Reboot Pod, not seeing a home though.
No, reboot pod is a rough time, especially
I
because
don't even
like
know what it does.
it allows you to, I think, attach a basic energy from your discard one to each one of your future Pokemon.
Oh,
And I'm like, yeah, that's great, but then they like, a future Pokemon, it just never hit. It was like the ancient Pokemon ended up being like the proper, like those were the good decks, and then
hmm,
two, they followed it up with sets where like attaching energy either from the discard or through like Teal Mask Ogerpon was like much easier. Like we have Glass Trumpet now. There's cards coming out in a battle, Journey Together or whatever that look like they're going to be absolute bangers. So I'm like, this reboot pod is just like, ooh, sorry,
he's
bud.
just there,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
you know.
I tried, but yeah, I think that ace specs are an amazing addition to the format, right? Um, I think that Pokemon has done a really good job over the time we've been playing between Prism cards, Radiant cards, ace specs. Like these, you can have one of these in a deck type cards. Um, it feels like, they always have done a pretty good job of like finding some playable ones. Every now and again, one comes out that's a little broken, Radiant Greninja. But, you know, ace specs especially, there's a part of me that like, I know we're only a year in. I Who knows how long they'll keep printing new ace specs, because I do think you get to a point where it's kind of hard to find an effect that's strong enough to be an ace spec that doesn't exist somewhere else in some other fashion.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if, like, starting in Prismatic Evolutions onwards, we no longer see any new ace specs. They usually do things in a year long batch, but I will say I'm already preemptively sad for the day that ace specs eventually rotate out,
Hmm.
because I think they're great. I think it makes people, there's like really interesting choices people have to make when deck building. It's not really clear what's the best ace spec for any given deck, right? Like unless it's really niche. Um,
Yeah, like a lot of times there's conversations around what A spec do you play.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's some cool stuff alongside A specs.
So I think it's really good for the format. I think it's good for deck building. And yeah, I think that was a home run in terms of like 2024 home run mechanics. I think the return of ace specs, grand slam,
I
baseball
will say
terminology.
Temporal Forces introduced the junior world champion, little baby Roaring Moon,
Yeah.
with the Vengeance Fletchling, but also introduced Raging Bolt EX.
Yes.
So I have a big problem with Raging Bolt EX. Pokemon felt like they were doing so good of trying to get away from big basics, hit big numbers, and take big KOs, and then this kind of put it on its head. But we'll talk about more why it does in future sets. But this was the start. This was the start.
But yeah, so I mean, overall though, I would say Temporal Force is the impact it had on the format as a whole set. To your point, two really amazing cards. Um, Outside of that though, because it did. Oh, I will say Buddy Buddy Poffin. I think this is when Buddy Buddy Poffin
Oh, did
came out.
I? Oh, did it?
I think I could be wrong, but I feel like it came out there here because we just had rotation, which got rid of
It
Battle
did come out
VIP
here. Yeah,
Pass.
it did come out in this set.
So I also think Buddy Buddy Poffin, I mean, you know, an amazing addition as well. Those are probably the three biggest cards from this set. And Buddy Buddy, I will say though, in moving into the future, I do think that one card that is, I would imagine, sees even more play and gets even better is Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking. I just
Ooh,
I think that card, it's still so good. and especially if you think we're gonna get new trade Zoroark.
Yeah.
So Cypher Maniacs, 2 to the top. Depends on how much trade Zoroark is really played, but even more cards that effectively just let you draw 2, which is all you need for Cypher Maniac. So
Yeah, I mean, had great synergy with like Pokestop, you know.
yeah. So yeah. So other cards to look out for there, but that was Temporal
Cypher
Forces.
Maniacs code breaking is a $5 alternate art.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
it. Easy
stonks.
play set. Yeah, for those of you that watched our episode last week,
Yeah.
there's an easy one for you.
Next set though in the rotation was Twilight Masquerade. And Jake, I'm not gonna lie, this one I think was a little bit of a flop. There's like a couple, I think there's a couple cards overall that like had a huge impact in the format. But I'm
There's
like,
way more cards.
you think there's way more? Okay, go for
There's
it.
way more cards.
What are the big hits in terms of
First one, Blood Moon Ursaluna EX.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, look, there's the thumbs up. So it must be a Discord thing.
It's an Apple thing, Jake.
It's
But
an
it's
Apple
fine.
thing.
Yeah.
Oh, Blood Moon Ursaluna EX. Fantastic card. We talk about it and we joked about it the last couple of weeks of like any deck can play this, right? Because every deck has a late game, and this is a great late game card hitting at least 240 in this. Dragapult EX not only has been a viable deck in the last couple months, right? In itself, but also kind of the reason that Regidrago is so good, right? One of the key pieces that Regidrago uses in there. Lots of control decks have used Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon EX in here. Iron Thorns EX was printed in this set, which was the world champion, right?
Yeah, fair.
And in combination with Dragapult EX is a viable deck right now, is a decent deck at this point. Also, the Wellspring Ogerpon EX is a notable card, for some control decks. And then the heaviest hitter, and the reason why I hate Raging Bolt, Teal Mask Ogerpon EX, is in this set. You could not tell me that this set was not more or less impactful. No way.
I guess.
No way. And that's just the Pokemon. I didn't even talk about any of the trainers. I didn't even talk about how Hyper Aroma and Unfair Stamp and Legacy Energy are in this set. Enhance Hammer was printed in this set.
Okay, fair enough. Fair. I guess, I'm comparing it to the last 2 sets in terms of, it's a tough one. I think that you're right. There's actually a lot of really good cards. But I look at this set and I think to myself, what decks come out of this set, right? Not what cards.
Teal Mask Ogerpon and Iron Thorns were the only decks that really like sprung into action. I mean, Dragapult, you could kind of count it because people really continuously tried Dragapult and now have found its home with Iron Thorns. Tatsugiri's in the set, by the way.
Yeah.
Love that guy.
Oh yeah, I know. So I think there's a few cards, but there's a lot of this set that it feels like they are cards that are really good with cards that are not in this set. Like Teal Mask Ogerpon, I think it's an amazing card. I think it can find a lot of different homes, but its home is with Raging Bolt, which came out in the previous set, right?
And Regidrago.
And Dragapult, it can be its own deck. And I will say, it's only recently that Dragapult Iron Thorns has been like, they sort of looked at each other from across the room in the set and was like, hey, you wanna do this?
Wait a minute. We could team up? Yeah.
Yeah. But like most of the cards in the set that you mentioned that are really good are like really good as part of something else. It's like, it's a strange thing to think like it's a support set. And for me, I think it's hard to categorize sets in my brain if there's not like a hero deck that like comes out of the set that feels like it just sets the tone. And I actually think
I mean that's the last 2 years, right? The last 2 years there have been, before like this year that we're recapping, there's been an expansion that's come out, and there's been just a straight up deck. I think like Lugia
Hmm.
is the best example in recent memory.
Yeah.
When Silver Tempest came out, Lugia became a deck, and it was storming in the format. It was arguably the best deck in the format.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
we haven't
Gardevoir,
really.
Scarlet Violet
I mean,
base, Obsidian Flame, you get Charizard, right? Like
yeah.
there's always like a poster child deck. I think the poster child for this set was supposed to be Dragapult.
Hmm.
And then I do think the designers, they put a lot of energy into the Teal Mask Ogre Pawns, into the Ogre Pawns. And then there's a
Yeah.
card that lets you swap them in and out of the, ad didn't hit. Probably
Yeah, they
because
hoped for an Ogre Pond deck.
you're right. They wanted there to be an Ogre Pawn sort of tribal style deck, but in reality, only one of the cards is consistently really good, and it's consistently good at being a support Pokemon. And the
Hmm.
others are like, they're not bad. They're just pretty niche. The fire one, I've never seen anybody play though. I think the fire one was
I
a
have seen people play it
okay.
at
Shout
Las
out.
Vegas locals. Yeah.
So like I do think this set has a lot of value. The one thing I think this set did do though, if I'm talking about it from now a collector's perspective, is the Greninja EX that came out in this set is the first. I think I think that this was a moment that was a bit of a touchstone for a re-energizing of high value SIRs.
Yeah. In modern,
Yes.
recent releases.
Yes. So like, Moonbreon and all that stuff, I think those really took off like crazy a year after they were printed. They were popular, but like the fact that Greninja came out the gate, $300 for this SIR, and now post that we've sort of seen every set now. There's the poster child. I'm thinking about Surging Sparks, especially with the Pikachu, but I think this was also like you have this set and then maybe the previous one where Pokemon also adjusted the pull rate coming out of
Hmm.
the previous year. So I think also from a collector standpoint, this is a Waterstone moment, a watershed. I don't know the term, but like it's a big moment for collectors to say, hey, we're gonna, fix the scarcity of some of these super rare versions of cards, and you can actually collect them. They can actually be worth a decent amount of money out the gate. Um, I don't know if the prices will hold at this degree long term.
Oh, Greninja will.
I mean, I think that it will hold 300 eventually. I do think there's a part of me that like feels like there might be a correction within a year of like, $500 Pikachu. I'm like, it's a little wild to me.
Greninja is sitting at like 325.
I mean, I know it's still there, and I might just be wrong on this one because I had several years of being programmed to think that modern era cards should be worth $100 max for like the top rarity, but so perhaps. But I will also say a couple of cards that are probably worth picking up. I don't know what their prices are right now, but the Perrin, the Lana's Aid, just gorgeous full art supporters as well.
Hmm.
Carmine, the alternate Carmine, yeah. So I just wanted to touch on that as like outside of playability, I think this set was a big moment for collectibles, like the collector side of main sets.
And then we had Shrouded Fable, which
Speaking of the collector side, wah, wah, wah.
is not the most remarkable set in terms of collectors. I feel like you had some really great cards in the set, right? You had the Dusknoir line, which is
Great from
which
whose perspective?
yeah, some people loved it, some people hated it, right? And you had James Turner, right? One of the creators in terms of different Pokemon designs, right? Make their first cards within the Pokemon trading card game, which are widely collectible, and stuff in there. You also had the addition of some other kind of unique cards in terms of the Genesect Aspec. You have Pheasantipity.
Serendipity
Pheasantipity EX
huge.
is an incredible card to come out of this set. Night Stretcher, a great card to come out of this set. and some other kind of like niche stuff that went on in terms of Colress's Tenacity, Binding Mochi, right? If you're playing
Yeah.
a Petrarun EX kind of deck, and Xerosix
Machinations.
Machinations. What an awful word to put on a card.
Yeah. Night Stretcher, I think did you say that? It just
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, and then yeah, some of the SIRs and stuff like that are very pretty. Like the Vezendipity is gorgeous. The
Hmm.
Monkey Dory is really cool. Yeah, I mean, just a lot of cool stuff in this set. You get the Petrant stuff too, but yeah, I think both of the special sets this year were I don't think one really stands out above the other as being like from a collector standpoint like a real hit. I think they'll both go down as being kind of like a little underwhelming. Um,
Hmm.
Basically, you can find them on shelves pretty easy, and
Yeah, I think you can
outside
find
of
Shrouded Fable pretty easily right now.
yeah, and outside of Bubble Mew, which was like the real main sell of Paldean Fates, I don't think Shrouded Fable has a Bubble Mew. I just I don't think that there's a card in this set that long term, like I think the Pheasantipity probably commands a decent price right now because of the playability of the
Hmm.
card. But I think if you were to ask somebody in 3 years' time when the set rotates, hey, do you want to go open up some Shrouded Fable? I don't think you would know what to look for in terms of what you're going to pull.
No, don't open Shrouded Fable. You're just gonna hope for, the secret rare dark or metal energies, and then the Earthen Vessel gold.
Right. So
That's your heavy hitters until they rotate.
it's a weird one. Part of me is like, I don't think this is one that you want to sit on a sealed collection of these. If you have a sealed case, just go ahead and open those bad boys up. Maybe keep one ETB sealed for funsies.
I will
But
say though, they kind of rocked the loyal trio,
oh
right? The
yeah,
Okie Dokie, Monkey Dory, Pheasantipity, Petrarun. I really like that kind of deck and the style of cards that they put out, especially with like the alternates and stuff. And I think it was a really cool like kind of faces of the deck.
yeah,
I like that it wasn't just one Pokemon. It was a group of Pokemon. I think it was kind of like a daring, twist for Pokemon, especially with the DLC and stuff.
yeah. It is a weird one. Like you almost there's a part of me that's like, I think in retrospect, if they'd looked at it, they were like, hey, we should put one fan favorite in here as the SIR. And it would probably, and I'm like, who would you put? Like maybe it doesn't thematically work, but Gengar or Tyranitar,
Hmm.
some like, dark or psychic type Pokemon. But yeah, but that's Shrouded Fable. But then Jake, I think for me, outside of Ace Specs and like some of the individual cards in the earlier sets, I think the two sets that were really home runs this year um, start with Stellar Crown in terms of like, I think people are going to remember these sets. I think these sets had
Hmm.
memorable decks, memorable mechanics. Um, I think the idea of stellar, Pokemon of sorts, like sort of Terra type stellars, this sort of reinfusion of interest in Terra types, because let's be clear, Terra type Pokemon have been around, for longer than Stellar Crown, right? Greninja EX, Charizard EX, which came out in Obsidian Flames, those are all Terra types. But the only thing that you could ever think of with Terra types is like they look a little different. Maybe they have a different typing than their usual type. Maybe not, to be honest. But outside of that, it's that they can't take damage on the bench. That's really
Hmm.
the only mechanic thing that they had going for them. But I think Stellar Crown is cool that it introduced like real value to playing Terra types, and real value to playing different energy types. So, but outside of like Jake, what are the highlights for you of Stellar Crown?
I think one of the highlights for me of Stellar Crown is Area Zero Under Depths, right? The
Mm,
stadium that, if you have a Terra type Pokemon in play, allows you to open up your bench into 8 spots. Maybe not so much the impact, right? Because we've really only seen a couple meta decks really trying to slot this in. But I think just especially like at the local level, there were so many decks that tried out some real old favorites, right? Like one of my favorites, Hisuian Zoroark G
Mm-hmm.
or V Star,
Yep.
Hisuian Zoroark V Star. Not a good deck, not one that sees play at the top tables, but sliding that in synergized really well with its attack, with the different abilities in the deck. I think just like brought a lot of really cool stuff in terms of deck building into the game. Maybe not at its highest level, but at least at its like biggest player base, which is the local level, right? For the more casual player, also introduced really cool cards like Crispin, right? You talk
Yes.
about the multiple different energy decks. You have Glass Trumpet, you have Crispin, you have some really cool Sparkling Crystal, Aspec, some really cool trainer type cards that really allow the engine to run, and then Noctowl as well, right? The Shady Dealings Noctowl, I think it's called Jewel Seeker
Yeah.
ability. Doesn't flow as well as Shady Dealings, I feel like, but
No. Yeah.
uh, Shady Dealings, Noctowl, a very, very cool card, right? Worked a lot with Terapicos kind of being that face child, that you mentioned, or that we talked about previously, how just introduced right out of the gates. And Briar has always been really interesting too. Just in the Japan Championships, the Champions League that happened just the other weekend. Briar, I saw one or two times have a huge impact in the
Mm-hmm.
rounds. Just super easy to find with like Luminion, right? While it's still around. So Briar
Yeah.
also only a $17 special illustration rare supporter that is gorgeous in person.
Yeah. And you only really need one Briar,
Yeah, you only
probably.
need one.
So yeah, because like you only get to do it once, really, for the
Mhm.
most part. Um, yeah, it's I fully agree. I think if you're looking for, you know, s- sets like groups of cards that I think are going to have a huge impact on the format for a while, I think Crispin probably will be even more played in the long term, but I think that the Fan Rotom
Oh
Noctowl
yeah.
line, like that, having just played that, I put that in my Sylveon deck, and having just played, some Fan Rotoms and some Noctowl lines, it's crazy. It is a crazy set of cards that, especially if you have the ability to play Terras with Area Zero, I I I think it's going to be a staple in the format. I think even more decks are going to start running it because what we're seeing is in battle partners, there's a lot of very specific cards that you might need to look for.
Hmm.
And if this allows you to like find those cards, um, and there will come a day when Arvin rotates. So I'm just saying, when they print an illustration rare version of your Noctowls and your Fan Rotoms, just you can, I think, feel fine to go invest in those. I think that's going to be huge.
They have the Noctowl that came in the ETB
Oh, okay.
for one of the sets. Yeah, the Noctowl Scarlet and Violet promo. Yeah, you can get the promo card, which is basically, an illustration
Illustration rare,
rare.
yeah.
It is $2 on TCG Player.
Yeah, like, I think it's a safe pickup. I would almost even say a 4 of, not in a deck necessarily, probably, but like a 3 of is not crazy.
And I think Shady Dealings, I mean, it was always good, but I think it was really excelled at the end of its tenure
Yes.
in standard format. I think it got better as time went on, but just to your point, like there's so much innovation deck building that you can do to have so much different fun. Like I love this set. I think
Yeah.
this set is really cool, even if it was a pain to open and try and do. It, it's a cool set. It'll go down as one of my favorites in recent memory.
And then the last set of the year, Jake, rounding us off, we did get Surging Sparks in this year.
Hmm.
I think, elephant in the room is the Pikachu. Special illustration rare Pikachu, absolute banger. Everybody loves it. Everybody wants it. Everybody's sad when they don't pull it. Um, but outside of that, I think it is a really interesting set. There's some definitely some interesting archetypes. I think a lot of people are really digging, playing around with things like Cerulege
Hmm.
EX as like memes. But Pikachu EX in general in a Miraidon deck is great. I think that there may even come a window where Pikachu EX has its own deck again. I don't. It's not right now. I think Miraidon is just a better home for it at the moment. But when Miraidon or parts of like when Raichu rotates, which is part of Miraidon that makes Pikachu any good in the deck, you know, people might start experimenting with Pikachu as its own deck again. But for me, some of the most fun mechanics in this one are the Togekiss.
Yeah,
I
Togekiss
mean,
came in the set. One of our favorites.
yeah, love the Togekiss. Love flipping coins when my opponent. It's like I get to play Pokemon Pocket IRL. Um, and then but I want to say one of the most impactful cards is probably Latias EX from this
Yeah,
set. Yeah.
Latias EX being able to give all your basic Pokemon free retreat as just a little basic Pokemon. Super easy to find, super easy to put on a big bench, right? And be able to run around, especially if you have the Area Zero Underdepths
Mm-hmm.
Stadium, right? Like in Miraidon and stuff. But this set, in my opinion, is pretty impactful, and not only in the results but also in people's minds, right? You have Archaludon, which Archaludon just won the Champions League over in Japan, and there's another thumbs up for me in the in for all you video watchers in here. Hydreigon EX, Hydreigon Tord Reckless just played Hydreigon EX, and I think there's another Hydreigon EX that just went super deep in the last uh, TPCI regional that we had. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I've been so busy, but like, and then you had Alolan Executor, which Calvin Connor won the regional that I'm
Yep.
just now referencing with Alolan Executor EX's attack. Right, you talked about how you built your Sylveon deck, which is really cool. Sylveon came in this set. Magneton. We talk about Miraidon. We talk about Pikachu and stuff like that, and how Pikachu could have its own deck. Magneton, the one that KOs itself, accelerates energies, was in the set. Cerulege, you talked about it as another fan favorite. This set had so many like cool Pokemon and cool ideas in decks. I also think it's like the biggest A-Spec set as well. There are, quick math, I think 8 A-Specs in this set
Hmm.
between the items and tool cards, including Precious Trolley and Scramble Switch, Energy Search Pro, right? There's some really cool ones in here. I think that this was a 6 set. Counter
Yeah.
Gain got reprinted.
I mean, this is an interesting set too because like I don't know. I'm trying to think of like what is an archetypal deck that comes out of this set that's like really impactful. Like maybe Archaludon, which is a fair, and Hydreigon will be those things. But I do think this is also a set that will have a lot of slow burn impact because
Hmm.
there's a lot of cards in this set that maybe are not like the best today because we have 3 other years of cards that it's competing against. But I think post rotation, when things start moving out, I think the stuff in this set is going to get wildly impactful. Um, Especially like this Eevee. I think people sleep on how good the Eevee that came in the set is that lets you evolve
Especially with the
immediately.
new, yeah, especially with the new Eevee set that's coming out. Yeah.
So if any of those EVs really turn the evolutions turn out to be like impactful, I think the fact that you have an EV that can evolve going first, turn one, or whatever turn it comes into play, as long as it's in the active, will also be a big deal. So yeah, big big impact for this set. I think long term and just thematically, I think it was a home run from a thematic standpoint too. It'll
Hmm.
be a set people remember.
And there's also like really good like high rarity cards in here. Like you
Hmm.
name dropped the Pikachu EX, right? The Pikachu EX being the big money card, but you also had like super highly collective cards like Licia's Appeal,
Hmm.
right? That Latios EX, Latios and Latios Tag Team GX is a super high end card, especially nowadays. And Latios EX, I mean, in itself is a $230 special illustration rare. So there are multiple illustration rares in here that are pretty big pieces. And then your gold cards too, like your gold cards, there's a Pikachu EX in here. That's super valuable for people. And then you also had like high-end, really important trainer cards
Yeah.
and energy cards. You had Jet Energy as the gold energy in this set, which is a really cool energy. Another freaking thumbs up. I'm not going to get used to it. I don't know how you do it, Sean. And then Night Stretcher was a gold in here, right? Shrouded Fable card that we just talked about, very impactful. You can get a gold Shrouded Fable Night Stretcher in here, and then Counter Gain as well, getting a gold. So like this set was really, really cool. Yeah, I didn't open any of it because I couldn't find it at all because everybody bought it out. But I mean, it's a super cool set if you get the chance to open it.
So looking now to our Discord just to see what a few people's favorite cards are. I think some people, was really loving like Galvantula EX,
Yeah,
which, is Galvantula the one that says item lock?
yeah.
So I will say to those people, if you like Galvantula, you're gonna love Prismatic Evolution. Is it Prismatic or is it the one that comes after? Whatever. But I think it's Prismatic.
No,
Badu.
I think it's Prismatic. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Badu.
You're gonna
Yeah.
love Badu. So wait for our set review for Badu. If you like item lock, but you don't like spending any money for it, energy, I should say.
Newsflash, it's good.
Yeah, newsflash, it's in like every deck.
Yeah.
So we'll see how many people love that. But yeah, in terms of other folks though, yeah, Dialga V-Star, that's not a card from this year, but I think Dialga did shine a lot in 2024.
Especially with the resurgence of Archaludon and
Yep.
the Metang, right, that accelerates energies. That also came out within the last year. So to talk about the resurgence of Dialga V-Star, that was a big reason. Andrew Hedrick won a regional with Dialga V-Star, or maybe it wasn't a regional, maybe it was a special event, but he won a major with it.
I think just looking through though and seeing what people are also not vibing with, and it has less to do, I think, with these sets in this year. I think a lot of people are really tired of Regidrago from a
Yeah.
format perspective, which I'm like, part of me, like, I feel it. It's like it's a hard deck to beat. It just feels like it has a tool for every situation, which, that is kind of the vibe of Mewtwo and Mew EX, and that's Regidrago, but Pokemon was smart enough to make sure that it was only ever good for 6 months before it rotates.
That's true.
So even though it feels oppressive now, just know that it could have been worse and it's going to go away soon. Dragapult, though, also being really difficult. I will say, I think Dragapult's an interesting card where I actually really like the deck in terms of placing damage counters, making those decisions. People hated lost, the Giratina that could come back and do damage and ping and all that stuff. People hated decks like that. But those decks, I think, reward highly skilled play. I think Dragapult is no different. I do think, though, that the difference with Dragapult is 6 damage counters can be a little oppressive because you're also doing 200 damage, right? It's not like you're getting a limited cap on your main. And also 6 is a kind of funny number where it forces everyone to play 70 HP versions of basics. Or if your deck doesn't have that, there's not really a way to stop Dragapult. So
you played Jirachi.
No, Jirachi.
Does Jirachi not stop it?
No,
Didn't
it only
stop
stops
Sableye?
basic Pokemon doing that.
Oh,
The
yeah,
only
that's right. Never mind.
the only card or cards I think that stop
It's
it.
Mist Energy.
Mist Energy, I think, stops it, but like you don't
Yeah.
want to throw a Mist Energy on like a random Pokemon. That seems like a horrible call. Or you have to play Rabska, and Rabska is a stage 1, so good luck getting that out if you got to run
If
a
you go
1/1,
second.
right? So I will say I understand where people are coming from. I do think that I think it'd be a good idea for Pokemon to print some resurgence of like a big parasol type effect. If you don't remember what that did, I believe if it was on the active Pokemon, it prevented all effects of attacks done to your bench.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying that it needs a hard counter necessarily, but I do think if we're gonna go into an era of setup decks at all, I would hate for the counter to be Badu. I mean, it works. Don't get me wrong. If you Badu a Dragapult and they can't use rare candy, well, they're not getting
Or
into
Charizard.
Dragapult. Oh yeah, or or
Charizard.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, so I will say though that I understand where they're coming from there, but and a lot of people just really excited for all the glory of Team Rocket, battle partners, owners, Pokemon, and a return to whatever region is it, Kalos, that we're going back to for ZA probably.
Gen 5.
Whatever
Yes.
yeah.
No,
So
X and Y. X and Y. That's Gen 6. I think it is Kalos.
yeah, so I think a lot of people also just very excited, looking forward to all the Pokemon from that region, as we likely venture back there in the trading card game sometime next year. But any other final aspects of the year for you, Jake, before we wrap this year up?
Sean, according to Limitless, right? My favorite spot for, deck lists, stuff like that, tournament results. What do you think? What deck has had the most points within the last 12 months?
Raging Bolt.
Raging Bolt
Ogerpon.
is 6th place.
6th?
Yep.
Oh
Try again.
Okay, Charizard.
Charizard is number 1. Yeah, you got it second try. Charizard was the number 1 deck with 6,067 points, about 14% meta share. Number 2 deck, Regidrago V-Star. So Regidrago V-Star, I mean, it's really blown up since NAIC.
Yeah.
Right? That was kind of the first time it came out. So
and
it's been,
came
like
out.
You're saying, like, yeah, it's been about like 8 months.
Yeah.
7-8 months now at the time of this recording. So in 7-8 months has been in the 2nd place spot, but guess how many points it has?
5,500.
3,700.
Half, basically,
so
Charizard.
Yeah, Charizard almost doubling the second best performing deck within the last 12 months. So, and then Gardevoir right behind it with 3,400, Lugia with 3,300, Lost Zone Box with 3,100. So the top 5 outside of first place has been a tight race, in terms of the last 12 months, what have been the most successful decks. But I thought it was super interesting that Charizard was the top deck by a decent margin.
Yeah.
I feel like. But it kind of makes sense. It's a good deck right out of the gate, right out of the box. Very easy deck, popular Pokemon, or I wouldn't say easy deck. Has had like different iterations.
It's straightforward, right? Like, get into Charizard, get into Pidgeot, attack, right? And
there
do a lot of damage.
There are nuances to it that make it a not easy deck to pilot. But yeah, Charizard being the number 1 deck. I don't know if I would have guessed Charizard, to be honest. I feel like I would have guessed like Lugia or Gardevoir, personally.
I guess it's
just because when Lugia was the number 1 deck, it was really good. It was really good.
I mean, Lugia just fell off really hard. And then Charizard, though, I think it's a deck that people built. It's good. It's never been not good. So, like, even though you could argue, like, oh, Regidrago is the best deck right now, or Miraidon is in a good spot, or Raging Bolt, whatever. Charizard is just always a deck that, like, if you get what you need, you can win any game with Charizard. You just can.
And slowly over time, like, it got more pieces, right? It got the Dusknoir line, which was used a little bit, which helped fix some math. It had Briar, right, that helped fix some
you even
prize
got Precious
mapping.
Trolley if you don't want to play the Prime Catcher version. Yeah.
Exactly, which is I think, I'm trying to think of the Champions League this past weekend. Was that the number 1 way to play it? I don't know. I can't remember.
It wouldn't surprise me. The setup that it offers with an Arven going second is just crazy.
Bonkers. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that'll do it for us. Jake, sign us out one last time for 2024.
That's going to be all for 2024. We'll meet you back here on the Metapod podcast for the 2025 version of the podcast. Hope you're ready. It's going to be a fun one, I think, hopefully. Some new cool cards coming. And January 17th, Gamba binders to get which Pokemon you want. Anyways, thank you so much for watching.